Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, how are you? Thank you for being here today. Did you enjoy the episode? Yeah. I'm sure you'd already seen it like probably 5 times. We Will and Grace fans are pretty rabid. My name is Stacey Wilson-Hunt, and I am the Hollywood editor here in Los Angeles for New York Magazine and Vulture. And this is my 3rd Will and Grace event in the last few months. I'm so excited. So let me bring to the stage Debra Messing.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Hello. Oh, come on. Thank you. You're paying them, right?
Yes, a small fee will
stipend.
On your way out, you'll get 93 cents. Isn't that a beautiful outfit, by the way? I'm obsessed. The best dressed person we've had on the stage in a long time.
Oh, nice.
So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
What does that reception mean to you? It's very welcoming.
Oh, it means everything. You know, I mean, we're all actors, right? We all want to entertain people. We want to make people happy and to make people feel things. And so when you get that feedback that you're connecting with people, you know, that's our purpose, really. And I think also just because, you know, we started the show 20 years ago, coming back, with 11 and a half years later, it felt a little bit more dangerous, I guess, because you don't know if people would be embracing of the new Will and Grace and the elderly Will and Grace. So the fact that you are laughing and that makes me feel
And also
good.
we needed laughs so badly.
Yes, as did I.
Yes. So before we get to Will and Grace, you had a long career before that show started. But let's start with being born in Brooklyn.
Okay.
What was your childhood like?
I was born in Brooklyn and immediately whisked out to New Jersey for 3 years, and then my father got a job in Rhode Island. And went up and lived on 4 acres of land we called it the rural suburbs. I mean, it was 8 miles to the nearest gas station.
Wow.
And lived next to a farm and would go over and watch the horses being born. And I was one of 3 Jews in my school system.
In your family or in the
School
town?
system.
Okay.
Yeah, school system. So it was, it was very sheltered, and the worst trouble you could get into on the weekends was to go in a pickup truck on Greenbush, which was this dirt road, and you would sit in the back of the truck and drink beer, and that was it. And I apparently I started dancing before I could walk.
Wow.
And my mother was a singer when she was a teenager, and so she played music all the time. And so I got right away into singing and dancing lessons, and I was going to be a Broadway hoofer. Like, that was my dream. And took dancing lessons and did all the plays in high school. And, I wanted to go and be part of the TV show Fame.
That was such a good show.
Wasn't it good?
So good.
Oh my God!
Debbie
I'm like, I want to dance on the taxi.
I think about right here is where you start pain and sweat. I think about that. I mean,
Yes.
I'm not a dancer, but that image of Debbie saying that with that stick
thing,
that she
the
had.
stick. Oh my God. I could play the music on the piano. That's how much I loved it.
Wow.
And my parents were like, "You are not going to New York. That you will die within 12 hours." So
New York was not what it is now. New York was
back then it was
little
much more dangerous. But they basically, I said I want to be an actress, and I never veered from that. And my father sort of started telling people that I was going to law school.
He was in denial, obviously.
In his mind. I'd already gotten into graduate school, graduate acting school at NYU, and he was, toasting to Harvard Law School. And so I told him that I would make a deal with him that, I would quit acting and go to law school if I wasn't able to support myself as an actor in 20 years. He did not find that funny. He's like, 20 years? I was like, you got to give it some time. You got to be patient. It takes time. And but my mom was always like gung-ho, and they just said, if you want to be an actress, you have to be, you have to be able to take care of yourself. So you have to get a liberal arts education. So if you want a conservatory experience, you have to wait until graduate school. And so I went to Brandeis University outside of Boston, very small liberal arts.
What did you study in undergrad?
Theater arts, all the way. But I was a studious person, a summa cum laude. I loved just learning everything. And spent my junior year in London studying acting.
Wow.
And it was it was like a small private school, and so our acting teachers were from RADA and Lambda, and my singing teacher was from the Royal Academy of Music, and our English teacher was from Oxford. And literally 7 of us would go sit under a tree in Regent's Park and talk about Hamlet for 3 hours. It was everything you expect it to be, and very oh my God, I'm a real artist. And then I came back and I auditioned for graduate schools and decided that New York was where I wanted to be.
So at that point in your mind, Hollywood wasn't the goal. It was, I want to be a working actor in New York.
Oh, no, okay. No. My goal was the theater. My goal at first was musical theater, and then when I got through, in my college, they didn't have any musical theater program. And so it was very, very, very focused, and it had a master's program, and the undergrad, our teachers were the master's teachers as well. So we had to do it on the side, and so I went to graduate school, and I knew I would take singing lessons, but it became clearer to me that, I could pass. Someone might cast me, I mean, I was offered, Adelaide, in Damn Yankees, and it's if it's something, it's comic. Right. I could pull it off, but
so is that how people saw you initially? Was
no,
comedically?
No,
okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
My goal when going into graduate school, I wanted to get all of the skills so that I could spend my life doing the great plays at all the great regional theaters of America. I wanted to go to the Arena, the Guthrie, the Goodman, the Seattle Rep, I wanted to do all of it, and I wanted to be head of Gabler, and I wanted to do Doll's House, and this was my dream. And when I graduated, my first role was Cecily in The Importance of Being Earnest in Seattle. And I went out, and my boyfriend at the time, who became my husband, it was the first time we were living apart, and I was living out of a suitcase. And I was loving the play so much, and I loved the cast, and I was miserable. Miserable. And I was like, I'm not a gypsy. That's not who I am. And I didn't know because I had never done it before. Right. And I was like, I can't do it. This won't
very
make me
romantic
happy.
to think about the life.
It is romantic.
Right.
And there were people in the cast who had been doing it for 40 years and loved it and loved being married and I have a play in Cincinnati and you're in there and we're going to meet on the weekend for one day and
Right.
And I was like, so how often do you see your husband? 5 months a year maybe. Wow. It's you have to be a certain kind of person, and I learned very quickly that that wasn't me, so I came back and I said to my agents, change plan. I won't do anything that doesn't happen in New York City. And they, you know what they said. They were like, excuse me? 99% of the work is outside of New York City. Wow. And I said, yeah, I know, I'll wait.
Wow.
I said, it'll happen. And they were like, oh my God, should we fire her now? Because she's not going to make any money. And I got a job as a coat check girl at Sotheby's, and I was fired.
Why?
I was fired because I didn't really get the system. the numbers, I didn't get it, and I was just like, okay, what's yours? Oh, the mink coat, which one? Which one? This one? Okay, what's that? Briefcase? What color? Black? All right, here you go. I mean, and they were like, oh, you are out. You are out. And then, you know, I tried to do, I did David Dinkins, like, event, and it was me and, like, you know, these big men. I was the only, you know, it was a friend of a friend from Rhode Island. They were like, oh, give her a job, and I couldn't even carry. I mean, it was pathetic. And they were
You're
like,
talking about being caterer.
Caterer.
Oh, I thought you were meant performing.
Cater waiter. You know, and they were carrying like, you know, 12 plates at a time, and I, of course, I broke things, and they're like, you're fired.
These all sound like Will and Grace episodes, by the way.
Yes.
Each of these, I'm imagining Grace going through each of these experiences.
And then I got the audition that would change everything, which was for Manhattan Theater Club. John Patrick Shanley was doing his play Four Dogs and a Bone, and they needed understudies for Polly Draper and Mary Louise Parker.
Wow.
So the two characters were 18 and 35, and I auditioned for John Patrick Shanley, and he sort of looked at me like, he's like, you're a strange creature. And I was like, yep. And he was like, and so he hired me to understudy Polly. Now I was 23 at the time. She was 35. And he was like, you're old. There's something in there, you're old. And I was like, yeah, I know. And so we rehearsed it all. So there were 2 men, 2 women in the play. And the women, you know, Mary Louise was doing Woody Allen's Bullet Over Broadway. Right. And Polly was shooting something in LA. And so they were constantly out. And the first time that Mary Louise was out, they called her understudy and said, you're on, and she said, I quit.
Oh my God.
And they called me and said, Debra, would you go on as this other character you've never rehearsed with the script in your hand in front of an Off-Broadway at Lucille Lortel Theater? I was like, sure. Because when you go to acting school, what do they teach you? You could do anything, right?
Right.
I mean, you could do anything. You want me to be 86 and, you know, all right, give it to me. I can do it. You know, it takes you a little while to learn that, you know, they'll put you in, you know, a 2-year age, you know, little bracket.
How much prep time did you have then at that point?
Oh, that night I went on. There was no prep. And
how does that even work? That's incredible.
You know, the cast members were, you know, very lovely, and they were kind of pushing me to different parts of the theater. And then John came to me and said, "Would you do both parts?" And I said, "Sure." And so I learned the 2 parts, and I went on 60 times.
Wow.
And I would literally, there would be days in a row where I would be 18-year-old, 35-year-old, 18, and these scenes were just the 2 of them. So I would be like looking, and I'd be like, I know both of your lines. So like, you know, and it was the hardest job I've ever had, and it was the best job because it just made you be courageous and just be like, you know what? This is the craziest thing. You never get to go on. You never get to rehearse. And then all of a sudden it's like an hour till curtain. They're like, you're on. And it's like, okay, you got to do it. And I did that. And then I left that to do a Paul Rudnick play to originate a role called The Naked Truth. And then during that time, I auditioned for my first film, which was A Walk in the Clouds.
Yes, I remember with Keanu. What was it like working with Keanu?
He was lovely. You know, speed had just happened.
Yes.
So
this
I
is
was
95, right?
Yeah, I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that was most interesting was the audition process of playing his wife. You know, I auditioned, and then they said, oh, we're really interested, and then it changed studios. And then a couple of months I had to audition again, but for that studio. And then they were like, yeah, we kind of like you, but we're looking somewhere else. And then like 4 months later, it was at a new studio.
Wow.
And I was like, I have been auditioning for this part, and the last time I dressed for the part, and I got it, and I was like, okay, great, woo, let's go. And then I proceeded to have the worst experience on a movie set ever.
Oh no.
And it left me, I literally called my agents and said, you know what, I'm not built for movies. I want to come home and I want to do theater.
What was terrible about it?
The director was, sexually harassed me, and
I'm sure you see this experience through a very different lens now, through everything
completely
that's going on.
And it's funny because I was just saying earlier that it wasn't until the Time's Up movement came out, I hadn't realized that I had been sexually harassed until December.
Right.
I was like, oh my God, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That was wrong.
Yeah.
That was sexual harassment. That was, that was abuse.
That was abuse.
And
for sure.
I had, in my mind, I was like, that's the business.
Right.
That's the business.
I'm just lucky to be here.
I got through it. It led to something else. I found my voice. I found jobs that felt authentic to me. And so, something worse could have happened.
I'm very sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
You deserve better.
Thank you so much.
So something completely different, Ned and Stacey, which is a show that I loved watching in
Oh my
in
God,
college.
that is so amazing that you liked it.
Well, it was Stacey, that's my name. Sorry. I think she means because not a lot of people watched it at the time. I think that's what you mean.
Okay.
Well, it had my name in the title, so just naturally I was gravitating.
Yes.
But what was it like working with Thomas?
He's a genius. I mean, he really is like
guy.
an original. He's so funny. And I was just so excited because I was like, I feel like I belong on a sitcom. Like in my mind, my goal, I was like, I want to be someday I want to be like Mad About You, and I want to be on NBC, and I want Jimmy Burrows to direct me. And
Wow.
and then this happened, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And it was the kind of thing where
It was Fox, right?
it was Fox, and in 5 years they had 5 different presidents.
Right.
So there was
It was
a
a
big,
tumultuous time there.
big turnover. And so because of that, whenever a new president comes in, they want to put their new stamp on something. And so, the first season I feel like was what the show intended to be. And then the guy was fired. And then a new guy came in and he was like, okay, well let's expand it and make it like this now. And, I've been very consistent. Like I feel, maybe it's because I was married to a writer, but I have a reverence for writers. And I feel like you let someone do their vision and you commit to it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you say, you know what? We gave it our all, God bless. But, to then be like, let's fire those writers, let's bring in new writers, let's just try and keep this thing afloat. I was like, why don't we just call it a day? You know?
They're trying to force something that wasn't working.
They wanted it to work. And I was, I was fresh from New York, and so when I got there, I was a size 8, and they were like, you need to lose weight. And so that was sort of the wake-up call, because in New York, I was skinny. Right? I was like,
theater
wait a
standards
minute.
are different.
I was like, I was cute back there.
And this is how LA destroys people.
Yes.
Like this
yes.
is this exact thing.
And so, and it was that made me again say, I'm not sure this is for me. And so I came back to New York and I did Collected Stories, the Donald Marguiles two-hander. And I had been offered another NBC series, and I had turned it down to do the play. And that was a pivotal moment for me. And it was a terrifying moment for me. It was an NBC show. It was Jimmy Burrows.
Wow.
And And I just read this play, and I was like, I have to do this play. There was something about it. And I flew myself in, and I auditioned for it, and then I got it, and then they were like, oh, we're gonna do this pilot, and they can't happen simultaneously. And I just thought, you know what? I will never forgive myself if I don't do this play. And I just have to trust that things will work out. And so I said, thank you, but no thank you, and the show was canceled.
Wow.
And I was like, thank you, God, for like, because if that had turned into Friends, I would have killed myself. But it didn't.
So I was curious, how did you get cast in Seinfeld? You were in 2 episodes in 96,
Yes.
97.
Yeah.
And my main question is, did that lend itself then to Will and Grace? Were you sort of in the NBC casting conversation at that point?
I was doing Ed and Stacey.
Okay.
And the casting director just called and said, we want to offer you this part.
Okay.
I think because they knew I was like a big Jew, and the part was, was like, the funny part was that she was an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember being really scared about taking the role. And I remember calling my dad, and I'm like, this is the button of the whole show. I'm like,
Right.
I don't know how I feel about this. And ultimately I was like, it's funny, it's I'll do it. And it was only supposed to be 1 episode, and then it sort of clicked, and then they brought me back again. And I loved it. I just, to be around them and to watch them.
It's hard to say no to that.
I mean, it's like it was like a beautiful dance, the 4 of them playing off of each other, and like the beautiful different, physicality, how it all just, by that point they had it down, and I just wanted to be in their presence and just sort of like watch.
I mean, it's incredible now I probably have seen every episode 100 times, but to look back at all the incredible actors who pop in.
Yeah.
Kristen Davis, Bryan Cranston. I mean, it's just this
Everybody.
parade of performers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everyone had the same idea. Like, just say yes.
Yeah.
So did that lend itself at all to when they were casting Will and Grace?
No.
So that was you started from scratch. Okay.
No. Then it's been weird, but
And trying to create a pattern of
I
these
know, and I'm
experiences.
not helping you at all.
No, I love it. I love it.
So I was back doing my play, and then I was finishing up, and they called and they said, there is this drama on ABC. It's futuristic. You'd be a bioanthropologist. Okay.
Okay.
And it would be counter-programming from Friends. You'd be up against Friends. And I was like, okay. And they're like, Sherilyn Fenn was cast, and we did, the whole thing, and they've decided it doesn't work. We would like you to audition. And so I went on tape in New York.
So you'd be replacing Sherilyn.
Replacing her and redoing the pilot.
Wow. Okay.
And so I didn't have like the time to like even work with the cast. Like I didn't know anybody. And then they called and they were like, you have the part, we start in 7 days.
Wow.
And so it was like, And so it just picked up and went, and it was just 6 months of like 18-hour days every day.
Wow.
And there were only 5 of us in the cast, and I was the star. And
Who are the EPs, the creators of the show?
I have no idea.
So you've stayed really close since then. Yeah.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm old. So I could just tell you the title.
Okay, the title.
Like that should work for now. And then, we were finishing up, and we had just finished, and I got into bed, and I called my agents, and I said, I'm going to bed for 2 months, don't call me. And they called, and they said, we have a script here, and it's really special. You have to read it. And I said, no. And they said, no, you don't understand. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm tired. I'm not good when I'm tired. And they said, stay in bed. We will bring it to the door, and you stay in bed and read it in your bed. And I was like, all right. So I'm reading the pilot of Will and Grace. And I was like, okay. was like, these 4 characters are really well defined in the pilot.
That's rare.
That never happens. I was like, wow, this is exciting. I don't know. And then I went to talk to Max and Dave, the creators of the show. We talked for like an hour. They were lovely. And then I got home and they were like, my agent called. He was like, do you want to do it? And I was like, no, I'm tired. And they're like, I said, no, seriously, I'm so tired. I'm not going to be able to give them what they deserve. Like there are going to be 100 other women who are just as talented as me, who will have the energy and will like kill it.
And was anyone else attached at this point, or was it still early?
Everybody else was cast.
Okay.
So they'd been looking for Grace, and they weren't able to find her.
Okay.
And finally, they were like, "Come over to Jim Burrows' house."
Oh boy.
They were doing hardball now.
Yeah.
And Eric McCormack, who's been cast, will fly in from Canada, and the 2 of you will just read and see how it feels on a Sunday. And I was like, I'm going to Jimmy Burrows' house.
Now, see, if you had said yes at the beginning, you wouldn't have been able to
I never
go to
would
his
have
house.
made it there.
So you played that very well. So don't say yes at first, you
That's
guys.
right.
That's
So
the
my
lesson.
agents like negotiated the deal ahead of time, which never happens, and they were like,
Wow.
look, you can just go in and see how, if it feels good. And so I went in, and we immediately started laughing together, like just playing, and it was effortless. And I just started feeling like, oh my God, this is fun. And we were given direction, and it was really like elevating, and I was like, wow. And I was like, thank you guys. And I walked out, and the sedan, like they said, a sedan that was blackout, you know. And I went, and I was getting in, and Jimmy came out, and he goes, you gotta do the show. And I was like, Jimmy, I don't know. He was like, I've been doing this a long time. A script like this does not come along. You will never find a script like this ever again. And I was like, all right, maybe. And I get in the car, and I leave, and you know, like the next day, I decide I will do it. I didn't realize that they had 2 other women coming into sedans and auditioning, one before me, one after me. They said it was just me, just to come and play, but it was a full-on audition.
Wow.
And I was like, those little bastards.
Is it true that Nicolette Sheridan was one of those people?
She was one of those people, yes. And
Who was the other one?
I don't know. Oh, you know what? I forgot her name. She had been doing a lot of commercial. There was like this very famous commercial that was like big national commercial. And I think she was in the mix. But I got it, and then everything changed.
Wow. I think you have to clap about that.
But my manager is here, and she will attest that every time I'm offered a job, I always say, no, I'm tired. Right? It's 18 years. I'm always tired because I'm always working, and I'm like, okay, when am I going to take like time? And then something comes, and I'm like, oh, I got to do that.
It's hard to say no to good stuff.
Yeah.
So I asked this of Sean and Megan. When did you know that the show had become something special? Was it episode 1? Did you watch? So it wasn't that immediate?
No.
Okay.
Eric knew that it was going to be a hit at the end of the pilot.
Okay.
We sat together in like that little, where the TV is on the set, and we're just sort of stunned. We're like, oh my God, people are laughing. And he looked at me and he was like, I think we're going to be together for a long time. And I was like, what? Really? He was like, yep. And I was, like, no, that's...
Is that because you had not great experience on Ned and Stacey? You just couldn't believe that it was going to work out?
No, it was because there were gay leads and characters.
Okay.
And I was like, this can be canceled in 2 episodes.
Right.
Ellen DeGeneres had come out and her show was immediately canceled.
Right.
So it was clear that America was not ready. You know, I mean, you had Ellen DeGeneres of all people, and they still weren't ready to see that. So I was like, you guys, it's really, we have no idea.
She also had the added struggle of, we got to know her as one
That's
character
exactly
in the
right.
transition. I think people were like, I don't know what
Yes.
kind of show this is, whereas
we were creating
you were
from
gay
the
from
beginning.
day one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, well, not really, not entirely, because I remember there being conversations about making it not too gay when we first started, because we didn't want to scare off middle America. And
Well, there are no gay people in
no
Middle
gay
America.
people at all.
Do not live there. Mike Pence is from Indiana, you guys. There are no gay people
Nothing.
in Indiana. Yeah.
But I remember, and I was stunned, that we got the market testing back after the pilot, and it said 30% of the people did not know that Will was gay at the end of the pilot.
Really?
And so they had done their job well.
Wow.
Right? They had made it a little bit, you know, I was like, we were talking about George Clooney in the first scene. I don't understand what, you know.
Yes.
But anyway.
Right.
And slowly, you know, once we realized that we were actually okay and we weren't going to be canceled, I think it was the second season. The second season, you know, at the end of the first season that summer, they started doing reruns. And that's when people found us. And then all of a sudden, our ratings just jumped up the second season. And we started getting really beautiful letters from people. And I think it was the letters that made me realize, before anything else, that it was resonating in a way that it was never intended to, and that it had much more import than we had ever imagined it could have.
Wow. And did Max and David sort of see Will as being the quote-unquote straight guy
Yes.
to Jack's not
Yes.
straight guy? Okay.
Yes. And, you know, it was clever because, you know, leading up to Will and Grace, every gay character, you know, on TV had always been a supporting character that was the clown. It was the person you laughed at. It was not someone that you cared for, or like rooted for,
Or had the A plot in the episode.
or had the A plot, and so it stayed in that track. And then they were like, okay, with Will, you know, he was the straight, you know, gay, and and he didn't have a boyfriend, so people could, you know, imagine that Will and Grace would actually someday get married, and for a long time, people really thought that that was possible.
Wow.
You
You just look so good together. That's why. You're just so photogenic together. So obviously we don't have time to talk about the entire run of the first iteration of the show, which was incredible. But I do want to talk about when you won your Emmy. And how did that feel, and how did that acknowledgement change the way you saw yourself in the business? This was in 2003.
Yes, and I was 9 weeks pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And nobody knew I was pregnant except my mom and my dad and my husband.
Wow.
I was the last one to be honored. And I think leading up to it, I had sort of said to myself, you know what, it may never happen for me. And, you know, the show is celebrated and it's okay. And I, you know, looked around, I'm like, oh, well, there's, you know, Sarah Jessica Parker, and my husband at the time called her Sarah Jessica Winner because she won everything.
Spread the love a
You
little.
know, it was an amazing time. You know, it was Jane Krakowski, and it was...
Ally McBeal won during that time too.
No,
for
that was
comedy.
before, but it was Malcolm in the Middle.
Oh, right.
And Everyone Loves Raymond, and you know, it was a very.
And that's interesting that you won in 2003, 5 years after you premiered, because that's actually rare for an actor, I think, to win that long into a show's run.
Yeah, that's why I was so surprised, you know, and it really, I felt like Sally Field. I felt like, oh my God, you really like me, you know, because I don't know. I think that it, for a long time, there's always this undercurrent of, I'm a fraud. and I'm getting away with something. Like, I'm talented, but so are a zillion other people, and luck just had a big part in, time and place and circumstance, and that somehow someone was going to be like, what's she doing at the Emmys? Or what's she doing at the Golden Globes? Who let her in?
But you're also way more educated and way more experienced, and you have so much more training than 80% of people on television. So you really do.
Yeah,
this isn't a fluke.
No, and I think part of it is, I always felt like an outsider. I think I felt like an outsider my whole life, and I think within Hollywood I felt like an outsider also. I wasn't the classically beautiful leading lady. I wasn't, it was always something that was a little just like, and and I sort of embraced it. I'm like, that's who I am.
That's also who Grace is too.
And that's who Grace is. And I think, and it was really a testament to Max and Dave that they allowed me to, make her dented, so to speak, because when we sat down and they were like, what are your concerns? And I was like, at that time, Suddenly Susan was a big hit. Caroline in the City was a big hit. Right. There were all these female-centered sitcoms where the female was not funny.
Right.
All the funny people were around her. And I was like, I don't want to be the pretty girl. And I was like, I have something to offer. And if I'm not allowed to contribute and to offer up, ideas and to play, I'm not going to be happy, and therefore you're not going to get what you deserve, So if you want just a pretty girl to set up everyone else, I'm not the girl for you. And they said, we hear you, and okay. And so from the very beginning, in the pilot, I did the thing with the wedding veil, and that was my idea. And Jimmy was like, I don't know, it might be too big. I'm like, I can pull it off. Just let me try. And it worked.
So great.
And at that point, they were like, okay.
But it was also great. I don't know if you guys remember, but Grace comes into Will's office and she's debating whether to get married to this guy who he doesn't like. And they're about to have this very serious interaction, and then her veil gets caught in the door. So
and I'm in a full gown with the veil, and I'm like, oh, Will, I'm so sorry. And he runs and he opens up the door and was like, okay, and then it just continued. The serious, like we didn't lay on it.
But also didn't get overly emotional. Like a very special episode of Will and Grace, which we don't need a lesson in the pilot.
Right.
We just got to know them.
So that's what I'm grateful for is that I've been able to work with people, whether or not it was, Starter Wife or Smash, or I was able to work with people who were interested in what I thought I could contribute. Because I think, when you're in a job where you don't feel appreciated or you don't feel seen, you feel like a dancing monkey. And, getting paid well to be a dancing monkey is only great for a short amount of time. And then you're like, I'm dying. Like creatively, I'm dying. And this is not why I became an actor. I didn't become an actor to just hold a place,
Great. So I don't want to run out of time for audience questions, but obviously we have to talk about the new iteration of Will and Grace, which was the best thing to happen to the world and since the first time. And you're now coming back for 2 more seasons, as far as we know, which is
2 more?
Incredible. And I was so lucky to be at the taping of the finale in January, and it was, I'm not joking, 7.5 hours watching these people work. And they fed us and gave us water and stuff. And they let us go to the bathroom and stuff. But it was, talk about Jimmy Burrows. I mean, someone I idolized my whole life, watching him work, watching you guys rework jokes that didn't work. It was the Alec Baldwin episodes too, and having him there was like an added layer of absurdity. But I have such an appreciation for what you guys do, because it's so hard and it's so rare now, and it's very old-fashioned, and that's what I love about it. And it felt like art in a like vaudeville or something. It's hard to describe.
I mean, that's the thing that, that makes me so grateful, for this crazy thing to happen, that coming back. It's because, I grew up on 4-camera comedy. I grew up, watching I Love Lucy, and then watching Carol Burnett and Madeline Kahn and, and laughing out loud. And, I remember being alone and no friends, but I would sit in that TV room and laugh out loud, and it really was everything for me. And since our show, halfway through the show, I think when Sex and the City came on, it was like, oh my God, there's like a whole new way of telling comic stories. It's single camera. And I love single camera. You can go much deeper and it can be much more subtle, but you don't laugh out loud.
Right.
And I realized over the years, I'm like, I miss that as a viewer. And I've just been waiting for it to come back, and I just see it dying off. And so when I heard that we could do it again, I was like, this might be the last time that I'll be able to be part of an old school 4-camera comedy. And
that's actually live. People are
li-
actually watching
live
it.
people, like there's no laugh track.
There's
Like
no
that's
laugh
bullshit. Like they write about it, nothing. It is like live. And people like rewrite. There are 11 writers there. We do one pass, and then they say, cut that, cut that, cut that, cut that. New joke, new joke, new joke, new joke. Go. It's like improv, and then we do it, and then we mess up, and then they run up, and they're like, this is the joke. Okay, got it. Okay, action. Blah, 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 blah. Ha! Like, okay, got it.
Except 8 hours of that. I'm not joking. It is so much work.
But shows don't do that.
Yeah, I know. No, that's what I'm saying. That's what's so unique.
Yeah.
But you guys, aside of a few times where people broke, you guys are killing it every take. And it's whether or not they think the joke is working, but it's not you guys ruining the take. It's, okay, we're revisiting that, and that's not landing the way we thought, and that's what's so. But it's your John Patrick Shanley play training. I think about what you've just described. Like that's still not as hard as what you did in that play.
Right.
So it's easy. You nailed it.
But it's not easy.
I know. By comparison.
Yes.
So we have a lot of great questions. I want to make sure to. And this person has my favorite name as of late, Trip Langley. Where are you, Trip?
Nice.
Yeah. It's like private detective name or something. I don't know where you are, but.
Did Trip leave?
Trip's in back.
Say
Sorry.
hi.
Okay. Stark back there. Trip wants to know, along with TV, you have a lot of acclaimed theater background, which we've talked about. What would be your dream theatrical role and why? A role you haven't played.
Well, first of all, I would love to originate a role. I would, something that is to be a part of, from the ground and really helping. Like I did that with John Patrick Shanley, my one and only Broadway show I did 3 years ago outside Mullingar. And that was an extraordinary experience. And I would love that again. Having said that, I think it would still have to be, Hedda Gabler or Nora in the Dollhouse or something, a classic piece that's, 1800s. It's and so many people have tried to imbue it with something new, and I just think it would really. I think I would learn a lot from being forced to do something that doesn't fit my skin, easily. I like to be scared a little bit.
Next question is from Craig, and great question. What is your favorite Debbie Reynolds story from set?
Oh, God.
We only have a couple minutes.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm just going to go right for the good one, because why bother, right? When she went in to Max and Dave's, when they hired her, she went in because they wanted to talk to her, and they said, Debbie, you're going to be playing Debra's mom, and we wondered whether or not you would be receptive to wearing a red wig. And she said, I have 3 hairs on my head. No, I have 3 hairs on my body. They're gray and on my pussy. And scene.
So she was okay with the wig, is what you were saying.
She loved it. She was very serious about, like, she would come in and try and match it. And she was very, her work ethic was incredible.
Wow.
She was very serious about it.
We miss her and Carrie a lot. The next question is from Navaris. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Navaris? Oh, right next to
each other.
What is your favorite song from Smash?
Oh, Moving the Line. You know that one? You movie. I mean, I was gonna say like the original song, you know, but I think Moving the Line was my favorite. It's like an 11 o'clock women's like belter thing, and I just remember, you know, her sitting there singing it, and Christian Borle and I sitting on the piano pretending that we're doing something, and watching her do it over and over and over and over again for like 3 hours in the plaza, and I was just like, she's a unicorn.
Wow.
You know, it was just like the perfect marriage of song and talent.
And I've always wondered, you have a great voice, but on Will and Grace, you purposely make your voice sound terrible. How hard is it for you to make yourself sound
Not
terrible?
hard at all. I like to say that, you know, my voice training, my 3 years of 70 hours a week, NYU, you know, really I've learned to adjust my larynx and my soft palate and blah, but
all right.
It's like being bad at anything is easy.
True. I can see that. This is from Chantal. Oh, hello. So actually, this is something I wanted to discuss too. When and how did you find yourself speaking your mind politically and personally in such a way that didn't fear that it would affect your career? Because you are very active in social media.
Yeah.
In fact, we talked at Sundance about how your doctor told you to put your phone down.
Yes.
Because you were using it a little too much.
Yes.
But you have become more outspoken in the last few years, as have a lot of public figures. But
I worked for the Hillary campaign. I went around the country on her behalf. Yeah, Hillary. And, I really think the thing that made me feel like I had to speak was the existence of Donald Trump as an opponent for her. And the idea, just hearing his hate, hearing the policies that he wanted to enact that, you know, was just all about breaking down any inclusiveness that our country had been working so hard to create over the last 50 years. And I just felt like this man can't be our president. Like, I have to do everything I can. And clearly I failed. And it was actually through the work with Hillary that I got connected with other like-minded people, many of whom had nothing to do with entertainment. They, were college professors, like constitutional law professors and journalists and pundits, and I felt like I needed to educate myself. And so that's when I really, really just dove into Twitter. Really, I saw it as a resource to learn. It's like, what is happening today? What changes are on the horizon? And how can I use my voice and my platform to get the truth out?
Right. And the show's done a great job too. I mean, the cake episode.
The cake episode was like, yeah.
But obviously you took great pains to show both sides, and that's what I actually really liked about it, because no matter if you're a Trump person or not, you're not going to not laugh at that episode.
That's
it's
right.
very funny.
Yeah.
Oh, so much to discuss. It's overwhelming. So that Artie would like to, well, first of all, tell you, where is Artie? Artie, hello. Artie.
Hi, Artie.
Hey, Artie. Artie went to a taping of Will and Grace in 1998. Because
Debbie Reynolds' first episode.
Oh, that's incredible.
God, amazing.
And he would like to know, how do you feel Will and Grace has influenced other shows characters or relationship-wise, in terms of what we see in the show?
I mean, I think once our show in the second season started being celebrated, I think that it made creators feel like, oh, okay, we can now explore gay and lesbian characters more. I think that the L word, and I mean, it was a slow progression, and then it was proliferating in a beautiful way, and but we still have a way to go, a ways to go. I was saying that when we were on the show, we only dealt with Ella G. That's it. Like, we didn't deal with B, T, A, I.
Right.
And I was like, this time around, I'd like to do the whole alphabet. And, clearly with Transparent and all these amazing shows, they have, gone on and paved the way and complete pioneers. And,
right. Well, and also and we talked about this when Sean was here, because he got a lot of flack at the beginning. Why are you this stereotypical gay man and your flamboyance and everything? And he's like, I'm only playing this one character, but this is not negating the existence of hundreds of thousands of other types of people.
Right.
So it must feel nice you're not the only show on TV now where that has a gay point of view.
Yes.
Because you're not like holding down the fort for everybody.
Not at all.
And that must have been a lot at the beginning.
It was, and I mean, in the beginning, that there was a lot of write-up in the news saying, sort of wondering, can Will and Grace be relevant anymore? Because, we were old school. There was a comic voice that was old.
Right.
And, could we rise to the occasion and bring it to date and still maintain the voice of the show? And I think that may have been one of the concerns that we had. It's like, okay, well, we'll see,
But it seems more self-reflective now. And I think it's more self-aware.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
It definitely doesn't feel anachronistic, which I know was probably a concern.
Yes.
Last question from my other favorite name, AJ Billions. That's a real person. He's right
here. Oh, come on! That's so good.
That's so good. AJ Billions and Trip Langley, you guys have to do something together at some point. This is a great closing question. What did you envision in your earlier years that now correlate to where you are today? And by the way, congrats on your success.
Thank you.
An early vision of yourself.
I think I always envisioned myself on a sitcom. So I think that, when that came to pass, it felt right. I think it's, beyond that, it was very hard for me to think 5 years, 10 years down the road. I mean, if you had told me when I graduated from graduate school that I would live in Los Angeles for 12 years, I would have said, you're crazy. And now I moved back to New York. It's been 7 years, and it's like, that's my home, that's my place. But oh, guess what? You have to do Will and Grace. You've got to go back to LA, And I was, with my husband for 20 years, and then, we divorced, and so now it's co-parenting, and like life unfolds in ways that you never imagine it will, and yet everything seems to make sense. And so I think where I am now is I'm much more trusting of the universe. And I think I'm also more trusting of my inner voice, that, what am I hungry to do right now? And, I was hungry to go to Africa. When we finished, I was like, it's a place I go a lot. I'm global ambassador for HIV/AIDS, so I've been going for 10 years, but I was like, I feel out of touch, and I feel like I need to get back there where I'm insignificant and where, it's like life began, humanity began. And I took my son, and for 2 weeks we just got back a week ago, and I feel reborn. And it was like, I heard that voice, and I was like, normally I would have been like, yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? And then I would find 17 reasons not to do it.
Like you're tired, you don't want to.
Like I'm. Exactly. Like, I'm tired.
Right.
But even more than that, I should get my house together. I've been away so long, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, what are you waiting for? Right. I think that's like my new motto. What are you waiting for? And I think that's a big change for me from when I began.
Do people know you there? Do they recognize, because obviously the show
Yes.
airs in some capacity there. What do they say when they meet you?
Well, it depends. I mean, I was, in a Maasai village, and they obviously had no idea who I was,
Right.
and Samburu tribe, and we went deep, and I love the fact that they didn't know who I was, and that I could learn from them, and that they were gracious enough to open themselves and to allow my son and I to be a part of the community, and but in the airport in cities. Be like, oh, hey, I mean, one of the craziest things was one of my first trips to Zimbabwe as global ambassador. We went to an HIV testing facility, and we were going to see how it was doing, and I was going to get tested on video camera to try and encourage people so that there would be no stigma. And we're walking by the waiting room, and there's a TV in there. And I walk by and I hear, I got to go, I got to go, I got to go. Midnight train to Georgia. And I was like, oh my God. And I walk in there and I was like, I'm on TV. And I was just like, and I mean, there were people in there just looking at me like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you looking, But I was like, okay, this was 8 years ago. I was like, okay, the world is small.
Wow.
Yeah. But not too small.
Not
Still
too small.
places to where you can
Get away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.